Science has built a strange universe from sense evidence and has been mightily deceived. Our whole civilization, we haven't really thrashed out fundamentals. We haven't thrashed out what gravity, what electricity, what magnetism are, what an atom is. And the Russell Cosmogony is a new viewpoint, a new concept on fundamental knowledge. Thank you, Nancy. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. And we've got approximately 2 hours to cover what I normally do in 2 days. Walter Russell was called the most versatile man in America, Leonardo da Vinci of modern times, and the man who tapped the secrets of the universe, which is the title of a biography of his life by Glenn Clark. Dr. Russell, every 7 years of his life, had what he termed an illumination. He didn't have any schooling beyond the 5th grade. And every 7 years of his life, he said he would become very much inward directed and quiet, and he received inspiration from God. At the age of 7, his first one, he said he noticed that after he had this mystical experience, his ability to, for instance, play the piano, everybody noticed it was augmented tremendously. At the age of 14, he was pronounced dead with what he termed black diphtheria, which you can read this in the home study course, and describes what happened to him as God took him off and took him through the various worlds and healed him. And to the amazement of the doctors, some hours later, he sat bolt upright, perfectly healed. He said it was about 6 months before he could speak after that, and it was basically because everybody was so frightened, and that kind of affected his unconscious mind, if I can use that term that he didn't like to use, his habit mind. So he was a very unusual man. At the age of 49, he had a major illumination that lasted about 38, 39 days and nights. And as he put it, God took him off into the high heavens and showed him how the universe worked. He spent then the next 6 years approximately learning the language of science, where he could transmit what he knew wordlessly. He said in a brief instant he knew it, though it went on for days and days. So he could transmit in language we'd understand what he was given. 1926, he published Universal One, which we have a copy of that original book that was sent to approximately 800 of the world's leading scientists around the world, none of whom that we know of acknowledged it. And it was those charts and 3 years of his lectures that led to atomic energy. And it's unfortunate for the world that he wasn't recognized, because if he had been and his whole vision would have been comprehended, we would have never gone that way. We would have never tried to develop nuclear power. We would have seen the other half of the cycle, really seen the cycle that we were dealing with, the half that we were dealing with, and would have not opted for that venture into atomic energy. 1957, the Russells wrote their book. As far as I know, was probably the first, if not one of the first, books to warn us against nuclear power, titled Atomic Suicide. And in that, they predicted, actually 3 years previous in a newsletter, they predicted that we would also destroy the oxygen of the planet and first notice it in the upper stratosphere. So that gives you a little background into the Russells. I guess a little more would be, Russell was president of the Society of Arts and Sciences in New York for many years. He also helped head up IBM, was a friend of Thomas Watson's. And he used to have ongoing dialogues with scientists in the New York Times. And I look at his cosmogony, he was just so far ahead of his time. And part of the problem was he was a very strong individual. And those of you that are familiar with Chinese thinking, Far Eastern dialectics, I'd say he was a very young man. And he was asking the scientists, he didn't say, you just got a few things wrong. He said, your whole science, the whole basis of it, even though you're doing things, is incomplete and incorrect. Your concept of the atom is totally wrong. When you think there's a nucleus there, that's a solid center. He said the center of every atom, if you would, was centered by a vacuum, by stillness. And you'll see tonight, we're going to look at the rest of his cosmology and see how he disagreed with Clausius and his laws of thermodynamics, the law of the atomic structure that I mentioned, Coulomb's law, the law that says that opposites attract. All of these things, he said, you're wrong about it, even though you've been able to do things. And I think it was just too much for the scientific ego to say, he just came on so strong, not to mention the fact that it was really new thinking. So, at the age of about 76, he had his studios in Carnegie Hall, and he would kind of, I think probably was a little disillusioned, even though he says he never was, because he didn't expect anything except rejection. And he had made arrangements, he was in the process of making arrangements with the Smithsonian to bury his ideas in a vault. Like Nikola Tesla, his friend told him to bury him in a vault for 1,000 years. Mrs. Russell told me the part of the statement that was never put in print was, they'll kill you otherwise. And I would say that what they did was ignore him, pretty much, the scientific establishment. He met Leo, and she was from British lady who had, her family was wealthy enough to school her with tutors, and she traveled around the world. I know she spent 6 months living at the base of the Great Pyramid. And she knew, she said, from a very young age that she was going to meet this man in America. He also said he knew that there was this woman he was going to meet. She called him up on the phone and said, I've just read this. It was The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe had just been published. So she called him up on the phone and said, I've just read this most remarkable book about your life, and your ideas are so like my own that I've had to call you up. She said, that took a lot of guts as a proper English woman to call a stranger up. She said his words were, where are you? Where are you? I've heard your voice within me for many years. I'll come at once. So it was a kind of the quintessential love story. And approximately a year later, they were married, went to Virginia, where the university is still located at Swannanoa Palace, and spent about the next 20-some years working together, writing books in a home study course. So our subject tonight is the Russell Cosmogony. It's something that struck me about our whole civilization and our whole science, is that there is not a common language. You'll hear people here talking about scalar waves and zero-point energy, and there's all these terms that, to me, I'll admit, they're vague. I don't quite know what somebody means when they talk about a scalar wave or when they talk about zero-point energy, except I think I can show you it's in Russell's Cosmogony. We've got a three-dimensional language. And when you jump out and try and use a 4- or 5- or 6-dimensional language and you're not aware of that, it gets confusing. So this is a workshop on fundamental, you could turn on the projector. Our science, our whole civilization, we haven't really thrashed out fundamentals. We haven't thrashed out what gravity, what electricity, what magnetism are. What an atom is. And the Russell Cosmogony is a new viewpoint, a new concept on fundamental knowledge. And let's show the first slide. No, I don't think so. In this chart, the science of the future is based upon God the Creator. God is light, God is mind. Science has built a strange universe from sense evidence and has been mightily deceived. And in a sense, you could say that all of his cosmogony is here even in these charts, but if you don't know all of the significance of it, of course, it'll escape you, and that's what we're going to look at, is the significance of it. And when he says that science has built a strange universe from sense evidence, Russell's illumination, he spoke of a short-circuiting of his consciousness at the seat of consciousness, which is the pineal gland in the center of the head, that many of you may be aware of from esoteric studies as an important point of meditation, where you go beyond thinking to knowing and divine inspiration. In this chart, this is the unwinding of the cosmic clock spring, and I'd say this is the half of the cycle that we saw in our science. We saw disintegration, we saw expansion, we saw centrifugal force dominance, we saw friction, explosion, and nuclear fission. And there's a lot of information in that chart beyond what science even saw of that end of the cycle. Let's see the next one. I'm sure it's the winding of the cosmic clock spring, which is the other end of it, which is centripetal force dominance, synchronization as opposed to friction, and fusion as opposed to fission. That's the other half of the vision. Some of these charts that I'm showing you are going to be published this summer in a book of scientific charts and paintings that have never been released before. 50-some charts and paintings that Dr. Russell created to explain his cosmogony. This is a painting of, it's a wave painting emphasizing the centripetal wind-up end of the cycle, the tornado principle that creates matter. And it's interesting to me as a physician that it looks exactly like a womb, too. Get my pointer out. You've got centripetal motion coming in here to a point, and of course this is like the cervix going up into the uterus and the fallopian tubes going up to the ovaries. And in a sense you could say that's like the womb is that's the birth. It's the seed of things. In a sense, it's easy to see why our civilization didn't see this end of the cycle, because it's not easy to see the formless beginnings of things, like the seed in the womb, the seed in the ground that's germinating. It's real easy to see it once it's matured in its mature form and as it's dying. Okay, Toby, can we have the overhead projector put on? Put them up one right after another. The visible universe that we see, I'd say it's looking at the mature or dying forms of things. And it's like seeing these parts of the wave, the part that's dense. You've heard some talk probably today about the ether and how it was discarded, as how can you have action at a distance? The ether, some people say exists and others say it doesn't. I guess I'd have to fall along the ether proponents from our normal language, in that I'd say, if you don't have an ether and you have this empty space, what is it? The word nothing, emptiness, really the only meaning I think we can conceive of is change of state or place. And Russell would say you've got the one substance, if you will, the ether, in various states of motion. The spiritual world that he called the still magnetic light, white light mind of God is the state of no motion. It's outside of time and space. But the visible universe is always just motion. And the part that we see would be the closer you come to the center of the spiral, which is like the center of a solar system where you've got a sun. What appears to almost be the center of the atom where you have a nucleus, that Russell would say other than a carbon, you still have a hole. So let's go on to the next. This was of course, what the Russells would call the atomic structure misconcept. The nucleus, solid nucleus, electrons spinning around it. Basically, Russell would say that what you're seeing as an electron is energy that's going out from a system. What you'd see as a proton is energy going into a system. And what we call a neutron, I think you could say that's kind of on the borderline. And it's all motion. Okay, the next one. So that visible universe has given us problems. or our lack of understanding of the visible universe. And now we've got failing planetary, animal, and human immune systems. And I would say probably the biggest thing here for the destruction of the immune systems is radioactivity, as the Russells pointed out in Atomic Suicide. They said leukemia and cancer would be simply the forerunner of scourges to come. And also, just as an incident, if you destroy the oxygen of the planet, in many of the cities now we're getting down to about 8%. So I think it's about 6%. You'll die of asphyxiation. If you're under-oxygenated, virus and bacteria love that. And I can tell you as a physician, it's amazing to me, 20 years ago when I started in practice, people were much healthier than they are now. You see constant viruses of all types, and it really picked up after Chernobyl. So we've got oxygen ozone depletion, fluorinated carbons, radioactivity being the causes there. Other toxins besides radioactivity and deforestation, all of this leading to increase of CO2 at the same time that we are destroying all the oxygen, and we'd reach a point where we wouldn't have CO2 anymore either. So imbalance gives us pollution, which gives us unsustainable systems. Let's go to the next one. Our answers come in a whole vision, which means understanding the invisible universe, this part that we don't see, the cube, the wave field boundaries, that part of matter other than this, which is the center of the system, the rest of the wave out here in the cube wave field boundaries that determine the form that we see. Let's go into the next one. When we have whole cycle visions, we'll see the solutions to our problems. And I would say this whole cycle vision it's the essence of a new paradigm for economics, science, human relations, all the 5 institutions and elements of civilization. And I say that one word, balance, which recognizes the one action in the universe that creates the visible universe, which is the polarization process. That's the paradigm, balance. And when we see that, we can have a new technology, which you're hearing about here from all kinds of people. Hydrogen fuel, tree forests, algae ponds, stop our nuclear production, bury our waste in the desert was one way, and of course transmutation of the waste is another way. Russell said, what do we do with this radioactive pollution? We took it from the rocks, gathered it all together in 10, 20-ton piles on the surface, has had its place in nature, finally divided amongst the rocks where it broke them down to create soil and water. We should try and mimic nature in everything, and if we're going to try and clean up this planet, nature transmutes and nature disperses those dangerous elements. So that's a cue for what we could do there. And there's a whole bunch of other solutions here, which I'm not going to go into because they don't really pertain to the Russell Cosmogony. But I wanted to mention that the Russell Cosmogony supports and points the way to solutions for all of our institutional imbalances.